Planet Earth 3 episode 6 came out, and this one is about extremes. So that's basically the caves, the Arctic, mountains, areas where there's wildfires, basically anywhere that's extreme, you know. So this episode opens up in Vietnam, where we see a cave system that had previously been unexplored, I think. And it was quite impressive. We got some good shots of the interior of the cave, and then we saw the usual kind of cave dwelling species like fish and shrimp that have become translucent, and they lived in the caves, living off nutrients that fall down from the rainforest above. And it was interesting enough. We don't see anything too miraculous there, but it's fine. It's a good way to start the episode, I thought. And from there we move on to the Arctic, where we see Arctic wolves hunting muskox. So I'll be honest, I think I've seen this before quite a lot. I've seen wolves hunting muskox in quite a few of these series, and it's kind of always a bit the same. This one was no different, to be honest. I felt it went on a little bit too long. The best part for me was when they stumble upon this carcass of a muskox and decide not to eat it because it's clearly suffered from some disease. And outbreaks of these sort of diseases are quite common now because of climate change. It doesn't really explain why, so we're kind of left in the dark with that. I have seen it before, and I think, yeah, it's kind of been done to death a little bit. But after that, we see the frogs in the Swiss Alps, I think. It was in the Alps anyway. And it was really interesting. I think, again, we've seen frogs mating in earlier in the series with the tree frogs in the freshwater episode. I think seeing the frogs in the snow was a very nice contrast, because they're, you don't think of them as being in the snow, and the little migration down to the pond when they're falling in the cracks of the snow and everything was quite fun. It was probably one of the funnier bits of the episode. The Barbary macaques in the Atlas Mountains in North Africa was the next thing we saw, and again it's like showing you how they're having to huddle together for warmth in the snow. If they don't manage to huddle, then it could be a death sentence for them. And we see this young Barbary macaque that's separated and is to try and find the rest of its troop. And it's all right. I think the problem I have with it is, the problem I have with a lot of these sequences is that in these programs nowadays, unless it has something to do with an environmental impact that's as a result of human activity, the story always ends up with a happy ending. Like, we don't see any animals in real peril. It gets resolved in the end, and so I don't feel like there was really any concern. There was no tension that the macaque was going to ever find its family again. I didn't feel like the outcome was a huge surprise, but it was still alright to see, I guess. We also see monarch butterflies, another species we've seen before. I feel like that's a trend in this episode, stuff we have seen before. For the most part it is. But the monarch butterflies huddled together again during the frost in Mexico, and then when one falls down it's to try and get back up. Again, it was fine. We have seen that before in life, and I think again in other series, but it was fine. And then we move into the part of the episode which deals with more warmer stuff, I guess. Fynbos was quite cool. We don't see the Fynbos very often. We don't see any animals at all. It's just really showing you a wildfire, and then the plants recover from it. And it's interesting to see how some plants are only able to germinate when there is smoke, which was interesting. I thought that was good. We do see some rare parrots in Australia that nest in termite mounds, which is interesting. During the fire, we see that obviously the wildfires sweep through, and they talk about how wildfires are becoming more harder to predict. Obviously, a couple of years ago, the wildfires ravaged Australia, like famously. They did say how, if they can't get away in time, it'll be a big problem. But then we see that they nest in termite mounds and they're fine. Again, it harkens back to what I was saying before about the macaques. Like, I didn't feel there was any tension because I knew they would be fine. I knew that the termite mounds are quite insulative. They're quite good protection against fire. The termites wouldn't have survived, They wouldn't build all these mounds there if they were going to get ravaged by fire. It was still nice seeing the parrots though, so yeah, it was still alright. We do move on to Amboseli in East Africa, where we see the effects of overgrazing and increased temperatures because of climate change have led to prolonged droughts now. But seeing the impact it had on elephants, particularly this mother with her two calves, we see that the drought's gotten so bad that she just couldn't feed the smaller calf and just had to basically abandon it. So elephants are like exceptionally social animals, like among the most you'll see in the animal kingdom. So that mother leaving its calf was probably a bigger deal than a lot of people will probably realise. But that was a really serious thing, and the calf just dies as a result of being malnourished in the drought. Pretty horrible. To be honest, it's in a weird morbid way, it's the highlight of the episode because it's the most impactful. Like, I think it's probably the saddest bit of the series. I think actually it definitely is the saddest bit of the series, and it wouldn't be Planet Earth without a snow leopard sequence, and sure enough we get one. The biggest difference is that the snow leopards are in the Gobi Desert, which is, you know, not the Himalayas where we normally see them. It was very interesting seeing them in an environment which is completely unlike where we're used to seeing them. I mean, the Gobi Desert's probably the coldest one out there anyway. I mean, it does freeze over a lot. Still, to see them in a time where it looked like everything was pretty warm was really interesting. It was really good contrast seeing snow leopards in this environment. But again, they don't really do a huge amount, but it was just nice to see them anyway, and I kind of felt like, you know, tick the box, the snow leopards are in it, cool, we've got that. And the end of the episode features the people who are filming in the caves, basically. A lot of this series has kind of dealt with the environmental impacts in the sort of where the behind the scenes part would normally be. So it was nice to see an actual behind the scenes sequence. Those parts sometimes are among the best parts of the episodes, to be honest. So it was nice to see that. And for me, it probably was, to be honest. It was a really cool bit, just seeing them living in the cave, really. Not even them filming stuff, just them surviving down there, showing their little routines. It was quite fun. And also talking about the guy who just stumbled upon this cave. That was quite interesting. So yeah, that was probably one of the more interesting parts of the episode for me. So yeah, definitely a high point for me. Overall, this episode is definitely the weakest we've had so far, especially coming off the last two, which I think were probably the best. I don't think there was anything that jumped out hugely apart from the elephants. The elephants were definitely the best part because it was so sad. I had the best behind the scenes part, definitely. And I think, yeah, I mean, the frogs were cool. I mean, and nothing was bad. It was just stuff I felt I'd seen before, and it didn't really add anything hugely new to it. Still good stuff, just not as good as what's come before, I don't think. So next week is the human world again. We'll see what happens there. Could be interesting. And as ever, if you like this, feel free to like it. Subscribe if you want. Comment. Let me know what you thought about it. Or don't. Options there. Yeah, what did you think of the episode? Did you like it? Did you like the same stuff I liked? Did you think it was better than I thought it was? Yep, see you again next week, I suppose. Bye-bye.